What's going on, y'all? It's another Friday night. And of course, that means you're joined by the tag team champions of Interactive Sports Talk, the dynamic duo,
Dynamic duo.
the play callers. That's right, your boy, Stephen Box. Joined as always by my co-host, the one and the only.
I go by that cool McCain.
And they call us the
Play
play callers. So yeah, man, tonight entitled this particular episode of the Play Color Sports Talk Show, March Madness. And not just for the NCAA tournament, but because truly it has been March Madness this week. So we're gonna be talking a little NBA, a little NCAA, little NFL, especially all these trades and stuff. We got that big Deshaun Watson story that just broke.
Ooh.
So a whole bunch of stuff to actually talk about tonight. But of course, because it is NBA season, we're getting close to the playoffs, and we do have our resident basketball aficionado, Kuba Kane, here tonight. We're gonna go and kick it off with a little NBA talk. So I'm gonna pass the mic to my co-host because this is your jam, bro.
Yes, sir. We're going to be talking some NFL, so my co-host will have his opportunity in the sun as well. Because we know, if you've watched before, this guy likes him some NFL. You know what I'm saying?
Oh yeah, college too.
Oh, yeah, college. Yeah, absolutely. So when talking NBA, there's a lot of different things to talk about. We only got an hour, and we got to save some time at the end for this whole free agency thing because I have some thoughts that you're going to really want to hear on those. But for now, what we're going to do is discuss a couple of different things. One thing is the surging or resurgence of the Golden State Warriors. So the Golden State Warriors, they have a little bit of a losing streak. They're 3-7 in their last games, but they won their last two games against the Clippers and the previous to playing them surging Denver Nuggets. So big wins. Steph Curry's, of course, out of his slump. You obviously we're going to have that happen because just to be real, if you want to deny that he's a candidate for MVP, that's on you. But he's clearly a candidate because of how important he is to Golden State winning. Klay Thompson is back. That's great. He's got the other Splash brother. But we've seen over the last couple of years, Steph has ascended. He's crazy. What he's able to do with the three ball, even driving in, being more multifaceted. If he adds a short range shot to his game, he's going to be the most unguardable small guy in the league. So go ahead, man. Any thoughts on that?
I mean, I think you pretty much nailed it, man. I mean, obviously, what Steph does offensively is just bananas. I
Yeah.
mean, I am a little bit disappointed in the fact that we've kind of gotten to this age where you don't really have to play defense to be MVP anymore.
Well, I mean, you got to make him a candidate, but I don't think he is the MVP. But I think he's the
No,
most valuable person for his team. So he's the team MVP. I wouldn't say the
no.
league MVP. I think that really comes down to three people. I've been saying this for a while. Giannis Antetokounmpo, Nikola Jokic, and the guy that's going to be hurt by his new co-star, Joel Embiid. I think those are the three people that everything comes down to as far as the MVP race. The Suns still in first in the West. Shout out to them for staying there. Memphis has actually, even though they have the same record, they've actually surpassed Golden State. So Golden State right now is in third place, but the same record, 45-22. What's important about that is long-term home court, right? Because you want to be at this point in the season, you definitely want to be in the top four so you can get that first round for sure. But if you can get to the top two, something happens and Phoenix does not win and get to the conference finals, then you're there as the home team. So that's definitely something that you want to, vibe with, roll with, and try to get to.
Right.
But again, we talked about what we want to talk about, and that's the playing game. So even though it's very close, the Spurs and the Trailblazers are only 2 games out of 10th. We're going to discuss the 4 teams that would be in the playoffs right now if everything's status quo as it is now.
Okay.
So the 7-8 game in the West would be the Timberwolves and the Clippers. The 9-10 game would be the Lakers and the Pelicans. For those of you who may have forgotten how it works, you're 7-8, you win that game, you place you're in, you're good to go. So right now, the only two people that can play one game and get in would be the Timberwolves and Clippers. The 9-10 game, you play, you lose, you're out. You win, you have to play the loser of the 7-8 game. And then you become the 8th place team, whoever wins that game. So you'd have to win 2 games off the rip if you're 9 or 10. So when I look at the 9-10 game, I see the Lakers and the Pelicans. The Lakers have had a up and down season, mostly down or mediocre, but they still have 28 wins. You know, I think when you look at a Pelicans team without Zion Williams, but with some other weapons, I don't believe they would be able to beat the Lakers in a 1-game play-in, because I think the Lakers want to try to get into the playoffs and will do anything necessary if it takes LeBron hitting another 50 to 55-point game so that they can get in and be in that 7-8 game. So to me, the Lakers would win that game.
Yeah, I mean, I'm not super confident as a Lakers fan. I think that they could win. They should win. But that doesn't necessarily mean they will win. As you alluded to, they do have, 28 wins this year, but they've also got a lot of losses. So this is not this is a team that has underachieved all year, and they seem to save their biggest underachievements for when they have the weakest opponents. So, I have to just be honest. As a Lakers fan, I don't have confidence, and quite frankly, I don't even know why this team would bother making the playoffs. You're not gonna do anything.
What do you mean? Your team has LeBron James, man. He has his own section of the fan base that does not care, what record it is, man. He is the Lord of the Bronsexuals, man. So if he makes the playoffs, of course they're going to believe and they're going to will him to being great. So, I mean, come on, man. How can they not make the playoffs?
The same LeBron James, who last year, when Anthony Davis got hurt, was not able to put the team on his shoulders and carry them past the first round.
I didn't say he would.
LeBron James?
I didn't say he would get out of the first round. I said he'd get out of the 9-10 play-in game. Now,
well, he might get out of the 9-10 playing game, but is he going to win the game to get the AC?
Well, we're not there yet.
Okay.
So the 7-8 game, Timberwolves and Clippers, I got to be honest, the Clippers are going to win that game. If it was played today, the Clippers would win that game. Minnesota is a gutty team. They're young. I think they're a little bit ahead of where they should be because their star player, Anthony Edwards, and people can say it's cat all day. You got to be real about it. What's going on, Will? You got to be real about it. Who's going to win this game? It's going to be the Clippers. So that's going to put, in my assessment, the Timberwolves and the Lakers for the 8th spot. And the Timberwolves are going to win that game. So I have the Clippers moving up to 7th by winning the 7-8 game, and the Timberwolves beating the Lakers in the second playing game. So I've got the Timberwolves at 8. Any thoughts on that, sir? Or anyone that watches live or the replay, any thoughts from you guys on who you believe will win those play-in games?
I mean, I don't really have a problem with that, man. Like I just said, I have my doubts if the Lakers would even win the 9-10 game. So obviously I'm going to have absolutely no problem with you suggesting that they would lose the 8th game if they make it that far.
And then when we head over to the East, shout out to the Bucks. The Bucks are 7-3 in their last 10 games, but they actually have won 7 straight games. So the Bucks are definitely peaking at the correct time. They are now in sole possession of second place after the 76ers debacle yesterday, which we'll touch on in a few minutes. And Miami is up 4 on Duke early. Good luck, Will. Will is also a fellow UNC fan. I did a separate video talking about that today because a few days ago, you can watch it on our page because I knew that today was going to be jam-packed. That was without the Deshaun Watson news. So we'll real quickly hop over to the games here. So the 9-10 game would be the Atlanta Hawks and the Charlotte Hornets. And that one, I'm going to have to go with the team that has the most electrifying player who can pull the game out of the end, and that's as he's sometimes been called, fourth quarter Trey Young. So I'm going to roll with Trey, and I'm going to roll with the Hawks. Sorry, Hornets fans, but I just feel like in a one-game playoff, he's going to be a little bit better than the Hornets. Now, could I see it going the other way? Of course, but you got to pick a side.
Yeah.
Your thoughts, co-host?
Yeah, I mean, being here in Atlanta, I get to hear sports radio, hear them talk about the Hawks all the time. So I would tell you, I don't necessarily know that Hawks fans feel as confident about this as you do. But I do think that in a one game play, they will be able to get that win.
And in the 7 and 8 game is the Raptors and the Nets. And here's what I'm going to say, and Will can attest to this as well as anyone else who's on the sip off with me. I said a couple of weeks ago, you get in a playing game with the Nets, you're losing. So to me, Nets beat the Raptors. Nets move up to 7th. Raptors move down to 8th. Raptors then have to play the Hawks. The Raptors, I think, are the team that's going to get knocked out. So I think the Hawks will end up with the 8th spot. So I think we end up with Nets at 7, Hawks at 8. Because I think, again, one game, you get up, gets you in the playoffs. Now, the problem is you get in the playoffs. Right now, you're playing the Heat. But that's a different story for a different week. But that would be who I think would do those. So really wanted to take a few minutes real quick and just discuss the 76ers game. 2-3 minutes. We got a lot of other stuff we want to roll too.
Right.
James Harden, you pick the highest profile game that you're probably going to be in outside of the playoffs, unless you're fighting for a specific seed last few games of the year, and you don't show up. Seth Curry, most emotional and talkative and everything that he's been like probably ever in his career, going back there to a team he didn't want to leave, but you get traded and you have no control over it. Ben Simmons sitting on the bench smirking. Kyrie played well. Of course, it's a road game with Kyrie playing. And the best scorer in the league, just pure scorer in the league, Kevin Durant.
Mm-hmm.
You do not want to get into a one-game series with this team.
Yeah.
And Philadelphia, this is what I want you to be concerned about, and this is what I've been saying the whole time. When you have a guy like James Harden who hit playoffs in big games, think about it. When you get to the playoffs, who are you playing? You're playing only the best teams, right? Mm-hmm. So it's no coincidence that Harden plays worse when he's stacked up against all the best teams. And that doesn't mean that he's not a good player. That doesn't mean that he can't break that. But when we're talking sports, you go off history. History says James Harden, big games playoff, you don't get the same production. We saw that last night, and we saw them really get dealt with. So, Sixers fans, your season's not over, and obviously you're going to say it's one game, it doesn't really matter. Oh, it mattered to the Sixers, and it mattered to the Nets. It just seemed like it mattered to the Nets a lot more. So, regroup, but be on the lookout, and remember, here on the Play Call Sports Talk Show, 13 minutes into the show, I'm telling you, watch out for James Harden in the playoffs. He hasn't shown that consistently. Hopefully he will for you.
Yeah, I mean, we're going to see what happens with it, man. I'm not going to overreact to one game. I think, even in the playoffs, we see this a lot of times where, a team goes out, loses by 20, 30 points in a game, comes back and wins the next game. So I don't put a whole lot of stock into one game. But when you do have a guy like James Harden who consistently tends to disappear in these type games, I think you do at least have to give a little bit of credence to watching that aspect of it.
Yeah, absolutely. And like I said, this is something that, though it's one game here, this is not the first time this man has done that. So you have to understand that, and you have to be ready for that. So, good people, it's about to get real. We have some college basketball talk. We're going to push that to the end of the show. We'll get a few minutes of that in when we can. But it's time. It's time to dig into the March Madness wildness that has been the NFL.
Yes.
And for that, I'm going to allow my co-host the NFL guy, we're going to call him, just set it off for us.
So first of all, let's go ahead and talk about today's big story. Let's go and get that out the way first. Deshaun Watson. So all 9 counts against him. The jury came back and said we're not going to pursue criminal charges in any of these 9 cases.
Mm-hmm.
So up to Jay Nelson join us over here in the chat as well.
What up, Big J?
So here's the thing. We said on this show, when all this stuff came out last year, why don't we actually do the smart thing and wait and see what the facts are? I know it's this crazy thing we do here on the Play College Sports Talk Show. Everybody like, oh no, you should speculate. You should just, make stuff up. We're like, no, we're actually gonna wait for the facts. We're actually gonna wait and see what's happening. Because the reality of our society is when women accuse men of stuff, there's an automatic assumption of guilt. And I'm going to make an assumption because he was found guilty or found innocent and there was no evidence found against him that a jury felt would deserve to go to trial, that he actually is innocent. I know there's going to be some people out there that aren't going to want to make that assumption. They're going to keep assuming he's guilty just because. But in my mind, he's been proven right. He welcomed the investigation from the beginning. He's been cooperative with the police the entire time. So now the question is going to be, what happens with Deshaun Watson? Is Houston going to make a play to keep him? Is he going to get traded somewhere? What are people going to have to give up to get him? I mean, we know, we're going to talk about it here in a few minutes, the Russell Wilson trade, what he got, what they had to give up for Russell Wilson. Deshaun Watson is younger. What do you have to give up to get a Deshaun Watson? So that's going to be interesting. So yeah, it was 22 cases, but it was like 9 counts they were looking at today. I believe all 22 could still go back and try to file some kind of civil suit, but this was specifically for criminal charges. So that has been cleared. So they can now do that. He says the NFL will still suspend him. We know how good Dick rocks. The problem here is I don't think that he's going to get suspended by the NFL. I mean, he already set out last season. So I don't think there's really any need for further punishment. Personally.
Yeah. Yep. I think he's going to get time served, right? Like, we're just going to call it time served.
Yeah. You
had to miss a whole entire season. Now, where I think you may get something is in the line of fines, because he was still paid all of last season. So I think you may get some fines paid. So I think you're gonna get some fines and different things run up on him for this year for that. Now, he may get a couple of games. A couple of games just to save face on it. I'd say 2 to 4 games. Worst case scenario, I think. Now, when you get into the whole situation that you spoke on earlier of assuming guilt, that's something that happens a lot, especially to people that look like Deshaun Watson. So the thing is, what I would like for people to learn from this is when these things happen, let's take a breath. Let's not assume guilt or innocence. Let's assume that there's a high probability that it didn't happen and that it did happen. Let's wait for everything to actually play out. Then once the situation plays out and we learn the actual results, then we can comment. Am I going to sit here and say that there was never a time where maybe one of these ladies felt somewhat uncomfortable with massaging him in certain places? Possibly. I'm not there. I can't say that didn't happen. Right. But I think what was made to try to happen was to ruin Deshaun Watson and ruin his good name. And that has been done, even though there's nothing that's come of it so far, except for there may be some payouts, because civil suits could still be filed. But at the end of the day, he was exonerated of any wrongdoing on a criminal level. So I want us to take the same energy for those who took the energy to say he was wrong and this had to happen and happened to happen, and say, okay, he wasn't convicted. So at least a lot of that was not true. Now, on to where he goes. He's clearly not going to go anywhere where there's not enough around that even if you give up what's needed to get him,
Mhm.
you still could be successful, right? He's
Yeah.
not going to come to Philadelphia,
Right.
right? The reason he's not going to come to Philadelphia is if you get the 3 first rounders that we have this year and probably a player quality, and you bring him into a situation where it's not going to be any better because you're not going to have much of a line probably because you probably have to give one your lineman. You're not going to be in a situation where you may not even be able to keep, the running backs. You don't know who they're going to want in order
Right.
to bring him in. You know, it has to be hurt, including the trade. You look at the Panthers. The Panthers may be a team that'll say, you know what, we'll do what it takes to get him. Jay Nelson just brought up the other team I was just getting ready to talk about,
Mhm.
the Steelers. You place him on the Steelers, even if you have to give up some picks and some players, you still put together enough of a team around him with that defense, and you could do some things.
Yeah.
Seattle may be a player for him because now they have, a cornucopia, as I used earlier, of picks that they can then use to do that. So there's a lot of teams that have a lot of different things that they can use. But the important thing is he has a no trade clause. So when we're doing all this speculation, think about places where he could go and win because that's the only places he's going to be focused on. And he has a no trade clause, so he gets to basically choose where he goes. Do not forget that.
Yeah, I'm gonna say, man, honestly, I don't. There's some teams I just don't see happening, right? Like Seattle, I don't see happening. There's not enough pieces in place in Seattle. And people talk about, oh, they got all these draft picks, but remember, they only have one first round draft pick this year. So, Houston's gonna probably want more than that if they can get it. And there's some teams out there that might be willing to give it to them, or they might be able to get a better pick. Pittsburgh, I think, is a really good potential landing spot for him. I know there's some people talking about Carolina. Carolina is not in position to make that move. Miami is obviously a destination that we heard a lot about last year. That they may end up trying to get involved into this conversation. I actually had somebody earlier that was saying they've heard some people talk about Indianapolis. He's not going to get traded to a division rival, so you can go and take Indianapolis off that list. New Orleans is a team that I think could be a really strong potential landing spot. They obviously need a quarterback. He fits Sean Payton's system very well, so it's going to be interesting to watch. What people would have to realize is, you know, and we'll go through these trades here pretty quickly here in the next few minutes. But I mean, Aaron Rodgers just signed a new deal to stay in Green Bay. Russell Wilson just got traded to Denver. Um, Carson Wentz just went to the Commanders. Know my co-host gonna have something to say about that here in a few minutes. So
Yes, sir.
when you look at it, you still got Seattle's looking for a quarterback, Carolina's looking for a quarterback, the Colts are looking for a quarterback, the Bucks are looking for a quarterback, the Saints, the Steelers. I mean, all these teams looking for quarterbacks. And if you look out there in the trade market right now, you got Jimmy Garoppolo, who's coming off the shoulder surgery. You have Derek Carr is a rumored guy who might become available. And then you have Mitchell Trubisky, who never really proved anything. And then in free agency, you pretty much have Jameis Winston, who's coming off the injury, and Teddy Bridgewater. So you got a lot of teams looking. There's not a lot available, and the draft isn't really looking that great either. So it's going to be really interesting to see what happens.
And don't forget about Gardner Minshew in the trade market. He's available as well.
So I'm going to tell you, Jay Nelson, as a 49ers fan, I'm going to tell you why this is not going to happen. As much as it would be awesome to have Deshaun Watson in San Francisco, and you're absolutely right, with those weapons in that offense, it would be a nightmare for a lot of NFL teams.
No
From a
picks.
salary cap standpoint, the 49ers desperately need Trey Lance to really step up, and they need that rookie contract. They cannot really keep this team together and afford Deshaun Watson. It's just not feasible. And you have to realize that, yeah, they could technically trade Trey Lance as part of it, which would kind of make up for some of the lack of picks that they could include. But I just don't see how they would make that work salary cap wise. They're already struggling with Jimmy Garoppolo's salary.
Yeah, for me, there's a lot to say, but I'll simply say this. Don't sleep on Carolina for Deshaun Watson. They have a running back that they're willing to get to put in a trade. So don't sleep on Carolina for Deshaun Watson. And do not forget one very important thing. Deshaun Watson is from the Carolinas. This would be a chance for him to come home. So sleep if you want, but it's not a wise decision. So yeah, that's all I'm gonna say. We're commenting on everything, but again, we got about 35 minutes left. Let's go.
So let's talk real quick. I said 2 weeks ago that Aaron Rodgers wasn't going to go anywhere. He was going to stay in Green Bay. And guess what? Aaron Rodgers is staying in Green Bay. Now he wants to play the same game he played last year with his immunization status versus his vaccine status. And play word games with what contract he did or didn't sign. It's like, dude, no one can technically sign a contract to the 16th. So we know you haven't signed a contract. Calm down. But you are going to be playing. I'm pretty sure that the details that came out are fairly close to being accurate. $50 million a year, 4-year deal. A lot of people are talking about them trading Jordan Love now. Why would you trade Jordan Love? He has no trade value. He's on a rookie contract. Keep him as your backup. You hope that he goes out and has a good preseason and actually gains some trade value.
Yeah. So Aaron Rodgers, 153 guaranteed of the 200 million. But here's the thing for me. You're getting more money, which means less assets around you. So the one thing that I applaud Tom Brady for in a regular 13 to 14% of his team's salary cap. So here's the thing. It's more like 20+% of the salary cap. So when you have these quarterbacks that get paid all this money, guys like Dak Prescott, he's got a big payday. You got guys like Josh Allen is going to be coming down the pipeline for that. Joe Burrow, after his performance, is going to be coming down the pipeline, and so many other guys. When you get that money, ask Russell Wilson what happens to your team. And that's the thing that Aaron Rodgers has never grasped or never cared about, one or the other. Or maybe he's so confident in himself that he feels like he can go out there with subpar talent and still win, which has been proven to be wrong by the fact that he only has won one Super Bowl and he keeps losing in the NFC Championship game or before. But that's what he believes. So the thing is, if you're a quarterback, what you should be really thinking about is, all right, I want to get paid, but is it more important to me to be a $40+ million quarterback or stay within that 30 to 35 range, maybe a little less, to keep weapons around me, have a team around me, and try to win Super Bowls? So do you want your legacy to be, I got a lot of bread, bro, I can throw the money in the air wherever I go, or I want to win? And that's something that quarterbacks, and not only quarterbacks, but quarterbacks, because they're the guys that push the cap the most, they're going to have to realize.
Yeah. Jay Nelson's comment there, about Rodgers is great, but he's no Brady. I mean, here's the thing.
Argument for me.
I'm not going to disagree either. But here's the thing I'm going to say. And Jay Nelson actually just put this in the chat too. Brady took less money. Okay. This dude has 7 rings. Guess how much money he made last year? $25 million. Why did he make $25 million? Because he wanted to keep the team together. Oh, and guess what? He also signed a 2-year deal that extended him out, where he got paid no extra money for doing so, simply to make it feasible for the team to re-sign people and try to make another run at it this year. So if you want to consistently win, that's what you do.
And the thing too is you make the money from endorsements from winning, right? Mm-hmm. Tom Brady, you see him in Subway ads, different places, because what? They're winning. You win, other people draw to you, and you get the money back on the back end. That's why Jordan never got paid a lot back in the day. You have to be smart. It's not about getting $40+ million for your team to say, I'm the highest paid quarterback. It's about taking enough where you feel like, all right, this is comfortable for what I'm doing, but let's leave a little bit for everybody else so that we can win as a team. Until that happens, guys like Wilson, Rodgers are going to be one championship and considered a really great quarterback, but not one of the greatest because you can't win the big games.
I mean, here's the bottom line. And you kind of hit on this, like, saying like, oh, do make your money on the endorsements or whatever. Yeah, I'm not gonna sit here and criticize anybody for wanting to get paid as much money as they can. If somebody's willing to give you 40, $50 million a year, I don't expect you to say, no, no, I don't want no money, right? But at the same time, you have to ask yourself, what is your priority? Because here's a newsflash for you. You give me $25 million next year, and I don't ever need to make another penny in my life. Like, I don't know what kind of life you're living. I don't know what your lifestyle is, but if you give me 25 million, I'm good. I'm set for life. So, when you see these guys come out, I'm making 50 million a year. Why? Like, is that the most important thing to you? Or do you actually want to win? Because there's not a whole lot of guys who make that kind of money who have ever won a Super Bowl.
But their bank account fat. That's
Yeah.
That's what must matter.
And look, and if your bank account being fat is more important to you than winning, I'm not knocking that. Make your money. No, choose, but just, that's what you chose. So there it is. So
Absolutely.
moving on. Let's talk a little bit about this Russell Wilson trade.
Let's do it.
So last year, Russell Wilson came out. The rumors were that he wanted out. He never publicly came out and said it himself. But the rumors were he was not very happy with the offensive line and the way the Seahawks were drafting. On the contrary, I've been very happy with the way Seahawks draft. But Russell Wilson ended up getting traded this past week to the Denver Broncos. They give up 2 firsts, 2 seconds. They basically swapped a 4th and 5th round pick, and they gave up 3 players. Drew Lock, Noah Fant, and I can't remember the third guy's name right now, but he was a really good special teams player who actually had a couple of blocks on special teams. So not huge names in terms of the players. All decent guys, not great. I know we talked earlier in the week that we kind of feel like Drew Lock was more like kind of in there. So the 4th and 5th round drop picks were maybe like to hey, take the Drew Lock contract away from us or something.
Maybe Noah Fant too.
Yeah, maybe Noah Fant too. But I think that when you look at this, personally, I feel like they overpaid a little bit for Russell Wilson. I'm not as in the amber with Russell Wilson as a lot of people are. Shelby Harris, appreciate that. Cage Rangers.
Yes, sir.
Is
Yes, sir.
the other
Shout out
person.
to the Cage Rangers.
So Russell Wilson to me is a great player. He's a very difficult guy to guard, right? But we've talked about it multiple times on this show. We talked about it last year. Russell Wilson has a trend. He plays great for part of a season, and then he fades off. And it's been this way for the last few years. But for some reason, people still talk about Russell Wilson like he's the guy who took the Seahawks to the Super Bowl. And I don't think he's that guy anymore. So I think they overpaid a little bit for what he is now. I don't feel like this necessary. I mean, it made them better, obviously. I mean, but you could have traded for any quarterback and been better than Drew Lock. So, I mean, what do you think? I mean, did they overpay for him? Like, where do you feel like this even puts them quarterback-wise in the division?
They definitely overpaid. Necessarily, probably so, because you were bidding with other teams. There have been reports of other teams. Some may be true, some maybe not. But there were other teams that were interested in Russell Wilson. I know the commies were. We'll talk about them in a few moments, and I have a lot to say about that. But I know that they were, as well as some reports that the Eagles at least reached out, as well as some other teams. So I'd simply say this. When you talk about a down market for quarterbacks right now, right? You name some of the free agents, you name some of the guys that are reportedly or purportedly available for trade. So when you look at that and you look at how many teams needed quarterbacks, because a lot of young guys have not really been as good as advertised overall, you kind of had to make sure that you got him. So you had to reach more than you should have for him. Now, I was listening to Jalen and Jacoby the other day, and Jalen made a really good point. One of the benefits of him going specifically to Denver is he's playing in the mile high air. The ball's going to zip more for him at home, right? He's going to have that advantage of being in that environment for 8 games. So that should help him with zip on the ball. That should help him be able to put more on the ball, or get the ball further than if he were in a lower altitude for those games. Also, one of the things that I like about Denver is they have a good group of wide receivers. It was crazy for what they put together. You got Tim Patrick, you got Jerry Jeudy, you got Cortland Sutton. You have a quality group of wide receivers there. So you put a quarterback with them at this level, it should work out. Thing with Russell Wilson is, like you said, drops off at certain points of the season. He was hurt last year. It happened last year, but he was hurt. Now, the other point with Russell Wilson is he's already 33. So he wants to play till he's in his 40s, a la Tom Brady. But he's going to have to the knock on Russell Wilson, the reason why he was a 3rd round pick, height. And it's harder for those smaller quarterbacks to make it that long. Now, the next 3-4 years, this may work out great. We'll see. But they're going to have to be very, very good around him. The defense is going to have to be better. They're going to have to make sure that they use the running game. They're going to have to put him in a good situation in order to get a lot out of him. And they did lose their best blocking tight end in Noah Fant. So that's something they're going to have to look to try to replace. And guess what? You don't have 1st round picks to do it, or 2nd round picks, because you traded them.
Yeah. So to a couple points that got made over here, Jay Nelson says, last season was Wilson's first losing season.
Can't really put that on him, though. He was injured.
Well, and here's the thing. Well, I think his point is he's trying to say that, that last season was actually the first time that he's lost. So, we're talking about him, maybe being a little overrated. But the thing is, when's the last time that you legitimately looked at Seattle and said they might be able to make a playoff run and win a championship? It's been a minute. So even though they haven't been having losing seasons, they haven't been a legitimate Super Bowl contender in a while. So that's what I'm kind of looking at when I say they overpaid. And I also agree with what Cage Rager said earlier. We talked about it. Obviously, you didn't only bring in Hackett for the idea of getting Aaron Rodgers, but that was obviously one of your main objectives. Once Aaron Rodgers re-signed, you can't be like, oh, everybody knows we're going after Aaron Rodgers, but now we're going to trade for Carson Wentz, right? Like, you can't do that. You got to go out there and get a name. And Russell Wilson was the only other big name that was out there until when Deshaun Watson's situation got cleared up today.
Yeah, but if you pay that for Russell Wilson, you're going to pay more than that for Deshaun Watson. The report is they wanted 4 firsts and 2 good young players. I don't see that changing.
Yeah. And yes, once the Legion of Boom was gone, it was, went downhill.
Yeah.
So we'll see. I do think that he'll help Denver out. They're obviously going to be better than they were with Drew Lock or Teddy Bridgewater. Russell Wilson is definitely a better quarterback than either one of those guys. He's not even remotely close. They do have weapons. You'll be interested to see what they can do with that. But they do play in a very tough division. So we're going to see how that plays out. But let's go ahead and move on to this other trade that happened.
Yes, let's.
Trade that I know you got some opinions on. The Indianapolis Colts recognized their mistake. They realized that the Philadelphia Eagles sold them into a pyramid scheme and shipped them Carson Wentz, and they decided to rectify that, sold off their products at a discount, and got out of the pyramid scheme. Congratulations, Indianapolis Colts, on securing a 2nd and 3rd round that could turn into another 2nd for Carson Wentz from the commies. So I'm going to let my co-host tell you all about what the Washington football team should expect of their new quarterback.
So first thing I want to say is very simply here. You take the team that is the most worst managed in the NFL, in my opinion, right? You had a whole email thing that just got brushed to the side. You have a very lackluster stadium. You don't know how to assemble quality talent all at once. And you bring in the softest quarterback in the league. You brought in the Ben Simmons of the NFL to be your quarterback. You brought in a guy, and I want people to hear this, and I want people to understand that this is what's really happened. You brought in a guy that during the Eagles Super Bowl run was going to other injured players and saying, man, it sucks that they're winning without us. And the other players were getting in his face and saying, what? You're upset because you're injured and we're still trying to win a Super Bowl?
Right.
This is the guy who Indianapolis decided to go and trade for. Frank Reich was supposed to be the quarterback whisperer for Carson Wentz, right? That's supposed to be his boy. That was his old OC when he was in Philadelphia. Oh, Frank Reich's going to fix him. But guess what? You can't fix that broken soft. I can't say what I want to say, but that broken soft piece of trash mentally. That's what I'm going to say. The thing with Carson Wentz, his talent is there. But if you can't get over this, you're never going to be a good quarterback. And the commies, you're getting exactly what you deserve. You went out and you let somebody let you buy some slick tires from a picture online without testing the tires yourself. You have gotten a guy that does not care about football. He'd rather hunt. You've got a guy that cares more about how many kids he has. You've got a guy that cares more about how people talk about him. You got a guy that cares more about if there's a backup that he would have to compete with or not. You got a guy that's got to sour the whole organization on him in 1 year, where the head coach was his guy. His coordinator with us, the only coach that he's been really good with that 1 year. And to Philadelphia Eagles fans, we have a subgroup of you that I have decided you're called Wentz sexuals. If you love Wentz so much, go be a commie fan with him. We don't need you. If you love the Philadelphia Eagles, ride with the players that are on the team. If the guy's no longer on the team, why are you so worried about what he does? Why are you praising him?
Yeah.
Commie fans, I've seen a lot of y'all on here now, and there's two groups. There's the group that feels the way I do, and that's cool. Everybody ain't going to feel the way I do, but there's another group. They love him. They think it's a great pickup. You better be ready, because you're going to turn on that joker in about 5 or 6 games. Because guess what he was best at last year? He was best at taking the ball, turning it around, and handing it off to Jonathan Taylor. He was asked to win 2 games. Couldn't win either one of them. And guess what? He couldn't even beat the Jacksonville Jaguars. He did not have the mental fortitude to beat the Jacksonville Jaguars to put his team in the playoffs. That's why he got shipped off. He didn't have the mental fortitude to compete with Jalen Hurts. He ran to management and said, I want out. And guess what? In Philadelphia, Howie Roseman is quite clueless. But when you go tell him you want out, he gets you out. So guess what, Carson? You got what you asked for. You're no longer with Philly. You also got what you asked for because you're no longer with Indianapolis. And guess what? The commies are going to realize their mistake, and they're going to do the same thing to you. Fans been talking about how the Eagles just harsh. The Eagles fans, man, they just harsh on this dude. He going to be fine in Indianapolis. Was it now? And the reports from Indianapolis, they were soured on him before the season was even over. 3 teams, 2 years. Guess what? It's only so long. If you this right here, you ain't no better than Ryan Leaf. And where is he at? So Carson Wentz, to end this, because I'm not going to talk about you the whole show, I've given you enough time and energy. In the words of Kurt Angle's fans, you suck.
Yeah. Here's the problem. Carson Wentz is talented. Carson Wentz can put up numbers. Carson Wentz can make you think he's good. He's not a leader. You cannot have a quarterback who is not a leader. You know, I saw people that were saying, "Oh, it made sense they went with Carson Wentz instead of Jimmy Garoppolo." But does it? Is Carson Wentz a better quarterback than Jimmy Garoppolo? From a physical standpoint, probably so. But Jimmy Garoppolo is clearly a better leader. His teammates love him. His teammates will go out there and fight for him. When Jimmy Garoppolo throws an interception, his teammates rally around him and they try to make up for it. Carson Wentz teammates beg for him to leave and go somewhere else. Why would you bring a guy like that to your team?
Real quick, Billy V, be careful. He might put a target on Slay's back. If he throws the ball at Darius Slay, I'm going to tell you what's going to happen. 6 points for the Eagles. That's what's going to happen. And that's if he can get the ball there without fumbling or getting sacked. It's another thing I didn't talk about because I know if my co-host was going to say it, and I didn't want to take everything from him. He holds the ball way too long. Eagles fans want to complain about Jalen Hurts. Carson Wentz holds the ball longer.
I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go out on a limb, and I'm going to make a prediction here about something that the Philadelphia Eagles organization is going to do the first time that you play Washington, or not the first time, but when you play Washington at home this season. I'm going to tell you what I think they're going to do. Before the game, they're going to do something to honor the Super Bowl team.
Yep.
And they're going to remind Carson Wentz that Nick Foles took his place and led the team to a Super Bowl. And Carson Wentz is going to have a meltdown on the sideline.
I think he's going to get a standing ovation before the game and boo the entire game.
Billy, you said he had to throw you a bone.
Appreciate that, Billy V. But nah, for real, it's just a matter of you're going to bounce around. Will he get another job after the commies finally get rid of him? Yeah, he will. Yeah. Because it's talent. And everybody believes that they can fix it. But unless you're a psychologist, you can't fix this. This is the problem.
Yeah.
Oh, and he's soft like baby's bottom constitution is also a problem.
Yeah. I mean, he's talented. That's the end of the discussion, though.
The back of his jersey should say SAWFT. That's what the name should say.
Soft. So the gauntlet says Wentz is the Philly legend. Oh man. So speaking of NFL news and not quarterback related, gotta go ahead and just kind of briefly touch on this Calvin Ridley situation.
Yeah, that's crazy.
So he was suspended for the entirety of the upcoming season because the NFL found that he was gambling on NFL games. And although I have not seen anything that came out and confirmed that it was Falcons games, I'm going to assume.
There was part of the money was on Falcons games.
Yeah, I was going to say I'm going to assume because the NFL statement was like they made it obvious it was Falcons games when they came out and made the statement because this is what they actually said in the statements they released out to the media. We found no evidence that any inside information was used. He was away from team facilities. We also found no information that any other players or coaches were involved or had knowledge of the gambling. Why would they say that if it didn't involve Falcons games?
Calvin Ridley. So here's what burns, right? Y'all know all off season I've been talking about. You're right, Jay Nelson, by the way. All off season I've been talking about. Oh man, we can get Ridley. He's got like 1.25 or whatever left on this rookie deal. The extension of the $10 million for the fifth year, and we'd be straight, right? We can still go out and get somebody else, but it'd be a good addition to the team. And reports are there were talks going on about a trade until this happened. Calvin Ridley. I understand you were having some mental issues, and I get it, and I'm not knocking you. But how? And this is not even because you may have been coming to my team. How on earth do you think it's okay not only to bet on the sport that you play, but bet on your team? Why would you go and bet on the Falcons? Why? Absolutely would have been fire, and that sucks. But why would you bid on your own team? Now you did make some bids on the NBA, and you wouldn't have got in trouble for that. But you bid on the Falcons. If you was another organization, right? Maybe they say, well, you really shouldn't be doing it. We'll give you a few games. But I have to say, my first was like, wow, you giving them a whole year. But then when I found out it's the Falcons he betted on, I'm like, you better be lucky if you get back in the year. You bet on the team you play for.
Yeah. I hope he at least bet against them. I hope he ain't loses money too.
Bruh, how could you bet on your team? When I saw that, I was like, like I said, all the money wasn't on his team, but you literally place bets against or for the team that you're actually a part of.
Yeah. And what makes it really stupid is, he came out and said, kind of alleged it was only like $1,500. Why are you betting $1,500? Why are you betting $1,500 anyway? Like what, dude? Like what? Come on. Like you really thought it was gonna be okay because it was just a little bit?
You cannot bid on the team you play for in any circumstances. You're lucky you didn't get Pete Rose. Yeah. What are you doing?
Just stupid, man. Just stupid.
Chargers made a nice move too, didn't they?
The Chargers did. They actually traded for Khalil Mack. What they end up giving up? A second and a sixth, I believe, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. It's I'm gonna be curious to see what happens with that. I think that's a nice trade for them. The question I think is comparing when you actually had Melvin Ingram versus replacing him with Khalil Mack. Because outside of that, the defense is basically about the same. Like I'll be curious to see how much of a difference that really makes.
I'm gonna just quickly say Khalil Mack is straight up like this. The dude is a monster. You put him across with Bosa, so now you can't just pay attention to him. And we're gonna be rocking what up, Snowman. But they're gonna be really rocking, I should say. That's gonna be a lineup that you like, yo. I gotta watch those two dudes. So I think it's a good move from that perspective. Oh, and I do apologize, co-host. I didn't answer one of your questions. I don't think that this makes Denver any better than they were last year as far as where they fit in the pecking order. Maybe closer. They could possibly get ahead of the Raiders depending upon what they do, but I don't think this makes them a great threat for that division.
I don't either.
It is what it is. So I want to go back and make sure that I, spoke on that. But simply, man, the Chargers are being smart. You got another good quarterback a great quarterback that came into your division. Let's bulk up the defense. We know we're good on offense. They also signed Mike Williams. So let's go bulk up the defense.
Yeah.
Let's do it. And they did it. They didn't have to give up too much because of the salary, but they did it within what you should do to get better. There's a guy that is going to be good. You got to pay him, but you got the money because your quarterback's on a rookie deal. So you can do it.
They also, speaking of the Chargers, they did franchise tag Mike Williams, but then they turned around and actually signed him to a 3-year, $60 million deal. So another move they made. I'll just run through really quick the other franchise tags that happened because it was only 8. Jesse Bates was tagged by the Bengals. Njoku was tagged by the Browns. Dalton Schultz was tagged by the Cowboys. Surprised by that one.
Yeah.
Devontae Adams, no brainer by the Packers. Cam Robinson for Jacksonville. That one makes sense. Orlando Brown Jr. by the Chiefs also makes sense. Like I already said, Mike Williams, Mike Gesicki, was tagged by Gesicki. Thank you. Was tagged by the Dolphins. A lot of tight ends got tagged. A little surprisingly, especially because the tag for tight ends was like $10 million. I'm a little surprised by some of those. Chris Godwin, no brainer for the Bucks. Although Carlton Davis was another candidate there. And then Harold Landry for the Titans, but they have since signed him to a 5-year, $87.5 million deal. So,
and don't forget, your boy Rogers' homie, his one ride or die wide receiver, Devontae Adams.
Yeah, I said him.
Oh, okay. I missed that.
Yeah, I
My
Sacramento.
bad.
Um, I saw a minute ago, and I've lost it now to see who exactly the player was. But the Raiders also signed an extension to one of their defensive studs, a $99.98 million deal.
Yeah, I saw it earlier. It was one of their defensive ends. I didn't
Yeah,
get a chance to see the name.
I missed the name. Yeah.
Yeah.
So just want to cover that real quick. So we only got about 5 minutes left, man. But go ahead. I'm just gonna let you talk since we have so few minutes. Give us a little preview of the NCAA tournament. I know right now we're finishing up some of the conference tournaments. So what should we be expecting for the brackets?
All right. So check it. Don't have as much time as needed, but we had to get to the NFL. All good. So what we have is a couple different things real quick I wanted to touch on. Missouri fired their coach, Cuonzo Martin. So he's been relieved. Missouri had a bad year. Obviously, Michigan lost. So they're kind of at that point where it's like, yeah, Max Crosby, appreciate that, Snowman. So they had a bad year. Michigan had a bad year as well. They're kind of going to be at that point where it's like, look, NIT sucks, but hey, at least you probably still will be a 1 seed there. Texas A&M in the SEC, I think it's quarterfinals, beat number 1 Auburn. They were 8th ranked in the SEC tournament. They beat Auburn 67-62. Yeah, big upset there. Wanted to quickly explain how the process works, and I don't have a lot of time to go into detail, but basically you have 32 teams that get in from winning their conferences. A lot of conferences we don't know, but a lot we know, like Big Ten, SEC, ACC, Pac-12, AAC, CAA, whatever. So it's a lot of conferences.
Yeah.
But basically 32 of those teams get in. You get 36 at large bids. You got a lot of teams on the bubble. The importance of the bubble is, say Duke or North Carolina wins the ACC tournament.
Yeah.
That opens up another at large bid because they were going to get in anyway. Let's say Gonzaga wins the West Coast Conference. Opens up another bid that we're going to get in anyway. Say Baylor wins theirs. You get the picture here. So basically, you're starting out with 36 at large bids, but as you get through the games, you're going to have some of the tournaments that are going to be won by a team that was already going to get in. That's going to add more bids. Now, when you have a team like, let's say, Texas A&M, who may not have solidified themselves in the tournament, being the 8th seed in their own conference, let's say they go in and win. That's going to be a spot that's going to be taken away. So that's a bubble team that's now going to be like, I might not get in because of that. So if you're a team that's on the bubble, or your team is one of the last few teams in or last few teams out, what you want is for the conferences that have those teams that are already going to get an automatic bid to win.
Right.
So every year you have this. So that way more of those teams can get in. Now, a lot of the big conferences are still at the point where they are finishing their tournament. Some of the smaller conferences have already finished theirs, and they're starting to get guys into the tournament. So real quick, I'm just going to give you a list of the ones that are already in the conferences real quick. A lot of them you're probably not going to know, but it's important to at least be on the lookout for them because they will be participating in March Madness. So the bids that are winning so far, Ohio Valley has Murray State in. Big South has Longwood. Missouri Valley has Loyola Chicago. The Southern Conference has Chattanooga. Sunbelt has Georgia State. The Atlantic Sun has Jacksonville State. That's a crazy situation because Bellarmine actually won, but they moved up just a couple of years ago to Division I. So they have a provision. I didn't get a chance to review if it's conference or if it's NCAA. I believe it's conference, that you can't win the tournament in your first 5 years in a conference. So what they did was they did default to the loser of the game. They defaulted to the regular season champion, which was Jacksonville State. Northeast has Bryant. The CAA has Delaware. Horizon League has Wright State. Summit League has crowned their champion. They have South Dakota State, and then the Patriot League has Colgate. So there are some of the teams that are in. I think Murray State was a team that was going to get it at large bid as well, and maybe a few others. But it's important to understand that these automatic bids are these teams' opportunity to be seen on the big stage. A lot of these guys, the teams you haven't heard of, a lot of these conferences you haven't heard of. But the main thing to take away from this is simply this. You're going to see a lot of guys that are going to get in that you don't expect. You're going to see certain matchups, and you're going to know that certain teams are going to lose because of how they play. You're also going to see some big name teams lose early. You're also going to see, I think, at least one team you don't expect make it as far as the Elite Eight.
Yep.
This is something that normally happens every year. So next week, we're going to be previewing all of those teams that do make the tournament, as well as talking about the other champions. Obviously, we'll be talking about like the ACC, Pac-12, those bigger conferences that we all know. We'll kind of maybe spend a minute or two talking about those champions and some of those games, because they're looking to be really good games for the most part. So excited, guys. Tonight after you watch the show, go turn on your TV, check out ESPN, different networks. There's going to be a lot of great college basketball on, and UNC is playing Virginia Tech at 9:30. Get on it.
Yeah. Just real quick. I know we're at time here, but I just want to throw this out real quick. So as you're watching the selections get made after the automatic bids, there's a bit of a change this year. So some of y'all probably know about this. Some of you may not have noticed it yet, but they have gone away from RPI and they're now using net. So this is actually the description from the NCAA. Says the net has two components: the team value index, which is based on game results and factors the result, the game location, and the outcome. The other component is net efficiency, which is offensive efficiency minus defensive efficiency, which is adjusted to account for the strength of the opponent and the location of the game. So I like the fact that they're actually trying to take some of these different things and they're leveling out. They're actually accounting for, like, are you winning home games? Are you winning on the road? Are these neutral site games? Are you actually playing opponents who have a stronger schedule, or, teams who are weaker? Like, when you play weak teams, are you winning by more points? Do you have some big wins versus a good team versus a close win over a bad team? I like the fact they're including more of this stuff. I'm going to be curious to see how it plays out, because my only fear with this is that we might end up like when we had the computers doing the BCS stuff, and it just got to be like so out of control. I hope it didn't turn into that.
Yeah, well, they've actually been kind of going toward this for a couple of years, but there's one important piece to that. So they have the quadrants, quadrant 1, 2, 3, 4. The simplest way to explain quadrant 1, and that would explain the other quadrants, to just change the numbers. If you're ranked 1 to 30, then you're a quadrant 1 win. The difference between this and any other system they've used before is if that team was a 1 through 30 team and they drop, then you no longer get credit for quadrant 1 win. It drops to a quadrant 2 win. On the flip side, you play that team and they're not playing as well, but then they move up to being a quadrant 1 team. Then what happens is they become a quadrant 1 team, and then you now get credit for a quadrant 1 win or loss. So that's an important piece that I like about this new system, is that they're allowing that shift. They're not doing like college football where you play a team, they're number 1, even if that team ends up at number 15, you still get credit for them being number 1. Not so fast. Wherever that team ends up at, that's the value for that win. So I think that that's a little bit innovative, and I'm excited about it. And I hope that long term it stays around. But yeah, that's the one piece I just wanted to make sure everybody got.
Yeah, I like that, and I hope that the NCAA football will take note of that and actually try to do something a little bit similar. So, man. So we're gonna go ahead and wrap up. Shout out to everybody who joined us over in the chat tonight, man. Jay Nelson, Cage Ragers, Snowman, Billy V, Eric
Gauntlet.
Nelson, Gauntlet. If I left any names off, I apologize. Just kind of trying to glance through the list over here real quick. Appreciate everybody who tuned in. If you haven't already, go ahead and make sure you hit that subscribe button. But do us a favor, man. Hit that like button over here on YouTube, because that lets YouTube know that, this is a show that you enjoy watching, and that other people should watch it too. So please hit that like button and spread the love for your peoples, man. We will see y'all next Friday night.
We didn't even have a commercial. We had so much to talk about.
We didn't have a commercial, but you know what? I'm going to give it to you right now as we exit.
Let's go.